Welcome, everybody. Today, I am sitting here with Bing Oliver, who is with Peake Coaching and Consulting. And we were introduced by a mutual friend, and I was interested in talking to you today, Bing, because I have, at this point in my cookbook publishing journey, talked to enough chefs and business owners to know that this business can be hard. And I wanted to hear more about your experiences, but also kind of maybe we can start out talking about some of the problems that you see, because I believe I heard you say, for example, they're working an incredible number of hours sometimes, or, so there's just not enough hours in the day, and that doesn't leave a lot of family time. So how do they do some balancing? And if you came up through the ranks, either as a small business owner or working in a restaurant, when and if ever did you get a chance to learn the leadership skills that you need to truly succeed as a business owner? So those are some of the things I'd love to dig into today. What do you see when you start to work with a client?
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for inviting me in here today. My background, was, of course, much of it was pre-COVID, and even before some of the things people are experiencing right now, I would say restaurants are just difficult. I like to think about that a restaurant, especially one that's maybe an independent, probably has every single function that a business could possibly have under one roof. So everything from IT, HR issues, risk management, quality control, warehousing, research and development, feedback, it's just every little piece. And it always takes me back to the book, Elaine, The E-Myth, which was kind of about a restaurateur, right? It's about this woman who makes really great pies, and she is told by her friends and family, you make really good pies, you should start a pie company or a pie business or a pie shop. And all she does is work all day making pies and then spend all night doing the accounting and the marketing and pulling her hair out, because she realized that although she was really great at running a kitchen, or maybe in this case a restaurant, really kind of gets sideswiped by all the things that are involved in running a business. So my career started as a kid in a restaurant, at a Chick-fil-A restaurant. Most of my career was with Chick-fil-A. And I went through kind of everything from being, filleting chicken on my first day up to working for corporate and consulting to franchisees and being a franchisee. And I kind of had to learn a couple of times what it took to really get the life that I wanted and not have the business or the career running me. So that's kind of my story and what I'm passionate about helping other people with.
Awesome. And so take a moment, let's stop there for a second and talk about the Chick-fil-A experience, because I hear from friends who have teenagers and things like that, that Chick-fil-A is kind of the golden standard when it comes to some of the balance things that we were talking about, and family and customer service. So tell me how Chick-fil-A kind of laid the foundation for what you do now.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I want to affirm what you just said. When I think about a business, one of the ways I can think about it is what I want my kids to work there, and what I feel good about, that culture influencing my children. And I would say, with Chick-fil-A was maybe, each store is independently owned and operated, so kind of a little different. But on the whole, I think most people say, they're pretty comfortable with their kids working there. And then most people as customers, regardless of kind of how you feel about Chick-fil-A's food, or they've kind of been controversial in the media some about some political issues, or really however you fall about Chick-fil-A as a company, it's really hard to argue with their execution. They just have people wrapped around the block, and they get them through fast, and they are always kind and courteous, and food is fresh. For the most part, it's just really amazing. And if you ask people, what is Chick-fil-A good at? well, let me ask you, if I can put you on the spot, give me a list of a few things that you would say Chick-fil-A is good at.
Well, I think, and kind of like you, I don't like to dig into the politics necessarily, but I love to look at, from a marketing perspective, what are they doing right? So the
Yeah,
things I hear or experience over and over again are that the people are friendly, the
yeah,
experience is consistently good.
yeah,
If there's a problem, it's taken care of immediately.
yeah,
And like you said, they've got them lined up around the block. So they're doing something that builds a relationship with the customers and brings them back over and over, because
exactly.
the line is long, but they are getting them through that quickly and delivering the high quality experience while they do it. That's
Yeah,
hard.
yes. It's beyond hard. It's what I call magical. There are a few brands that I interface with, and I just think, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. How does this happen? That magic happens. It just all seems to work together magically. And so the interesting question there then is, okay, so how does that happen? And I think what happens most of the time is that people look at a business like that and they copy the tactics, or they try to. So they say, well, I'm going to copy the sandwich, or I'm going to copy the service model, or I'm going to, go into locations like they go into. But I think what's really being missed is that the real key here is leadership, because what happens there's no lack of competitors with Chick-fil-A, or businesses who are in different arenas that admire Chick-fil-A, who aren't, they all have a board. They all have executives. They're all sitting around coming up with probably really great ideas. But the question is, why can't those ideas come out in reality? How do you execute those ideas? And up until recently, it's been entirely leadership. It is now shifting to culture, which is a whole nother topic, but we're here to talk about leadership today. So we'll save culture for another podcast. But yeah, in the current reality, how do you lead? Let's bring them together and say, how do you lead in such a way that you create a culture that creates that,
Yeah.
because the executives aren't running the registers. They're not making the
Right.
food. So how do we get our people? And I believe good leadership is the key to that.
So what do you think most people are missing? Because you went through an experience in which, you struggled a bit and had to work out a few things on your
Oh,
own
yeah.
with your own restaurant journey. And then you learned
That's an
enough.
understatement.
Paving the way here. You can share if you like. So you can share that in a moment, but also I think talk about kind of then what did you learn that made you say, wow, other people, other restaurant owners need to know this too?
I've had the gift of having a couple of experiences where I just didn't really even feel like I had any choice. Like I had to change. And maybe I have the gift of, I don't know, I'm pretty stubborn. I'm not sure what it was, but I got to a place where I just was like, this is not working. And I'm hearing a lot of people saying this now. And what I saw in me, and what I see and hear when I talk to others is, if this recipe is not working, and we talk a lot about recipes, that's great. Then what I need to do is just try harder, and put in more hours. And it's hard not to do when you're short on staff and you can't seem to stock the shelves. These are real, like a lot of our problems in the restaurant world have really dropped way down Maslow's hierarchy these days. And it's really gotten into a lot of survival stuff. And so when that happens, you've got this person who has the potential to lead an organization getting sucked into running shifts and doing, inventory orders and stuff like that. And not there's anything wrong with that stuff. I believe owners need to be involved in the whole business and be a good example to people. But if the business is relying on you for that, that's not sustainable. And eventually there's going to be a crash.
And
So
you're probably going to lose your business.
oh yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually you're either going to lose that or worse, because here's the thing, and this is what, I think the controlling idea for me is today is, can you have the life that you want and the business that you want? And me growing up, I was taught if you'll take care of the business, then it will take care of your life. And I think that is true, but I have found you actually have to reverse it to start off with. And so you have to first off say, what is the life that I want? And get really, really clear on that and articulate it. Best to have some people around you to support you and help you to do that. And then you say, okay, now I'm going to design the business to make that happen. And I found that there were some real leaps of faith that I had to take in order to get there. And, when I first had my franchise, I went in with probably more advantages than anybody I know to having this sort of perfect. I had picked a restaurant in a beautiful area, and I had a lot of examples of people who were really good about, leading their restaurant as an executive and not getting all caught in the weeds. And it still sucked me in. And I had to get a coach, and a coach helped pull me out. And they asked me to do the very first thing they asked me to do. Can I share that?
Absolutely.
The very first thing they asked me to do was it reminds me of Indiana Jones when he took that step into the chasm and he couldn't see the bridge, and then it appeared when he took the step. They said, we want you to start taking whole days disconnected from the business. And I thought, well, I can do that after I get things under control.
Yeah.
And they said, actually, you need to do that first. And it was brilliant, because what it did, even when I didn't think that I could, and I understand people when they say, what are you, crazy? Like, that's the last thing I can do. But what's the alternative? If you don't recharge and you don't have time to get your brain into a place to be creative and develop strategic ideas, then all you'll do is keep doing what you've been doing, and that will eventually run amok. It'll either ruin your business or your life, or both. And so I found by taking that time, I began to see strategies that would help me work my way out. And eventually I did get to a place where that part two of the equation, which was the leap of faith, was to build a support team. And that wasn't hard to conceptualize, but it was hard to get used to the idea that the whole point of the success team was to make me my best. That felt selfish. But when you have the right team, they recognize that the owner leader needs to be at their very, very best. And everybody needs to be working in their zone of genius. And so if we create a team of geniuses all around what we're best at, everybody's really enjoying their work. But at the crux of it, we need to make sure that I'm okay, and that I'm in that space of creativity and inspiration, so that I can do the thing that only I can do in the business. I mean, if I can't create inspiration and genius ideas in my business, then that's another way to run amok.
And I think that relates to almost any small business owner. If you look at it, but let's assume I'm an aspiring restaurant owner. I'm not, but let's assume I am. And I'm coming to it because I love food, and I love sharing my vision of food. I love making people feel good with my food. I've perfected my dishes over the years. People are telling me right and left that I need to open a restaurant. My family is all rah-rah and supportive. My friends are telling me that. But none of them knows what it really takes to run a restaurant. So I'm coming at it with enthusiasm and vision and experience with food and kitchens.
Yep.
And then what happens to me? So let's just kind of take that on a little buyer journey. So I start opening my restaurant. I find out about the inventory and the accounting and staff management issues that maybe I didn't have to deal with in quite this personal a way before.
Right.
What else is creeping in on me that I didn't expect?
Well, the big one right now is staffing issues. And it's, I have one person in my orbit that I was talking to the other day, and he's highly successful with multiple locations and admired by his peers. And he and his family are getting pulled into positions in the restaurant. And I said, hey, I thought we talked about this, like if you have to be doing that, then who's at the helm of the ship? And he said, well, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not doing it because I'm worried about losing the business. I'm doing it because I'm worried about losing the employees who remain.
Mhm.
And that's a really great heart, right? However, still, same problem. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So there are some problems right now that some of my folks are facing that are really monumental, bigger than I've ever seen. But to answer the question more, in the big picture and not just right now, because I think these things are going to pass. I'm seeing some hope that especially as I'm seeing owner operators change their mindset around what they're willing to do for employees. I'm beginning to see some shifting and or able to do. So some of the other things, feeling like you have to have all the answers. When you're younger and you look at leaders, you maybe think that they're a great leader because they have all the answers. And then when you become a leader, you think you need to have all the answers. And actually, as the business grows, it serves the business best for you to expect others to have the answers and to help facilitate the answers. And that kind of runs against our grain, because we like to be the one who comes in and saves the day. And that I see as a really big thing with Restaurateurs Lane, is we're sort of addicted to saving the day, And so we like to come in every day and go, there weren't enough ingredients. I ran across town and found the one place that had a little extra. I got back right before the catering order had to go out. And, I was a hero today. And then sometimes the evenings involve what a friend of mine calls dopamine rich in activities to recover from that. And then you wake up the next day and you kind of do it all over again. It's kind of Groundhog Day.
So if we sit there for just a second and think about, if that's the mentality that I'm here, I'm used to saving the day, I'm the one with the answers all the time. So I've come into this with my vision. I've started building my business. This is my expectation of myself and of the business. And now things start to kind of go awry. So the challenges come up, and it's not that I can't handle them. It's that I can't handle them all at once, all by myself. Right. And so I'm trying to wear all the hats. I start to feel the burnout. My family relationships start to suffer. The restaurant is now in a decline. Yeah. I'm losing staff. And this, what started as this wonderful adventure is now this very heavy burden that I've created for myself. Yep. And now I'm trying to figure out how to dig out of it. And so let's say you and I have talked and you've coached me through some of the things that you just described. Yeah. And I'm finding some balance. What is changing for me as I move forward from this point? What changes in my small business or ownership journey?
Well, the first thing that we're going to ask you to do is go back to the original intent, to take in your mind and think about, okay, what was the business of my dreams, and what was the life of my dreams that these things were gonna, was it going to do inside the business and outside the business, which can make me happy and fulfilled and help me use my gifts, be my genius zone. So then we create some contrast and some gaps between, okay, this was the dream and where are we now? And then we get into really probably two things that are most helpful, and that is to think about your role and your time. So on the role, it's, like you said, it's not that you can't do the things, it's just there's too many of them. So it becomes a capacity issue. And so if doing everything used to work, and then that kind of stops working, then I have a model called the 5D. So first we start off we're making pies, and then we delegate, and we're like, okay, I'm going to show you how to make a pie. You're going to make a pie, and I'm going to come back and make sure it's done right. So you inspect what you expect. And then you get to the place where you need to go in. So it's do, delegate, then develop. So once you have a bunch of people making pies, then you can't delegate to everybody. So you need to develop a department leader, the pie making leader team. And you're developing that person, and you're developing systems for them to use. And then it gets to the place where you have, in my world, usually it's 5 million, 6 million, where I see restaurants, maybe lower for independents, but I'm talking about some franchises. But you get someplace where you have actually even too many people and systems to be able to develop, and then you need to become a definer. So it's do, delegate, develop, define. And when I start to work with a leader and then eventually their teams, what we usually find is everybody's kind of shifted one lane. So the doers aren't showing up, the delegators are having to do their job. The developers aren't able to develop systems, so we just kind of do the same thing every day, not developing people and growing them. And then the owner of the business, who needs to be the definer of culture and internal brand and external brand, and where the business is going, isn't able to really be at the helm of the ship. But a lot of times when we show them this, there's a little poster and an assessment that takes about 15 minutes. Once people understand the lane they're supposed to be in, and they begin to recognize when they're not in that lane, and they can kind of pretty quickly shift, we'll usually see a pretty rapid shift in the business when everybody understands their lane and we help them shift into them. And then the outcome that you're asking about there, or the transformation, is really that we get back to what we had hoped for. And so we see people being able, when if you started a business because you love making those great pies or that great dish, your role it's not really going back, it's sort of going forward to what you've intended. So maybe you don't get to make as many pies as you want to, but maybe your new joy is developing a new recipe, or working with somebody to develop a new website that really brings people into your business. So you're still getting to tap into that genius, but in a different way. And then outside the business, I find people reporting, that their spouses are saying, wow, it's nice to see you at home again, and you seem to be more relaxed. I had a client send me a video today. We do video coaching in between sessions to keep people connected. And I said, hey man, you just look so relaxed and so in the zone today. And that's very rewarding to see people, to see the dream not die, to see it come alive.
I think that's one of the key things from this conversation that I'm going to take away, is that when you stay in your zone of genius, you are the creative, you are the one with the vision and the enthusiasm and the energy. And if you get burned out, all of that goes away and you don't have anything left for the people around you, whether it's your staff or your family. But if you can find the pathway, I like the way you've broken it down and simplified it. So if you can find the pathway to define those things that need to be structured in such a way that keeps you doing the thing that made you successful in the first place, or even takes you to that next level, then that's where it's rewarding. And that's where yes, the business is everything you were hoping it would be in the beginning.
Yeah, there's two ways you can burn out, Elaine. One is just your hours, where there just literally is not enough of you to go around between work and all your other responsibilities. But the other one is, even then, once you get that into place, you could still burn out within a reasonable amount of 40 to 50 hours a week if you are working in your zone of frustration. Or even, now here's an interesting thing, kind of leave this genius zone topic on this thought, is I'm learning that even being in your zone of excellence can be exhausting. So excellence is one step down from genius, and excellence is where we get rewarded. We can build a whole career on things that we're excellent at, but they take energy from us. And, my dream for me and the leaders that I work with is that when you engage and you do things like this, for me, is kind of a zone of genius thing. because I get to create and I get to collaborate. I'm a creative collaborator. So right now I'm in my zone of genius, and which is really cool that I just realized that and I just got goosebumps. But what that means is when we say we're done with taping this and we get off of our session, I will have more energy than I had when we started.
Nice.
And so in those 40 hours, it's not just getting the hours down, but having more and more of that be things that give you life. And therefore that gives you an abundance to flow over into others.
Yeah, nice. So if you were going to give 2 bits of wisdom, share some expertise with our audience, what would you tell the people who are running restaurants right now? What are your 2 top pieces of advice?
The first one is think about your relationship with time. And most of us use the phrase, I spend time. And I would challenge you to explore the concept of creating time. So that you can actually be the master of how you spend, the trips that you've got remaining around the planet, and that you can create time that puts you and others in their zone of genius and really gets these remarkable experiences and lives ultimately. The second one is to just ask yourself, where am I in my zone of genius? My team and I just took Patrick Lencioni's Working Genius, which is a really great resource to get some idea around. I learned that my assistant and I are polar opposites. So I'm a wanderer and an inventor, and she is tenacious and an enabler, which means she gets stuff finished and she cares about the well-being of others. Yeah. And so we're polar opposites, and that's a great match.
Yeah.
And other members in my team have other giftings. So just become curious about genius and learn about it in yourself and in others. And if you can create an organization that gets as many people as possible in their zone of genius, I think the results can be amazing. And the last thing I want to say about this is a friend of mine said, if you have one wanderer inventor, which is me, I wonder about things and I invent things, you probably need 20 plus tenacious people on your team who love getting stuff done. And a personal note, I handed over my end of the month book work to Krista, my assistant, on Monday. Wow. And in classic entrepreneurial style, I'm really sorry, but I just have to give you this. And she said, I love this. And I thought, thank you.
I need those people in my life too.
We all do. We all do. And the things I talk about, I niche down to restaurants because that's what I know. And and we speak each other's language, and it helps people to go, oh, that's the guy for me. Mm-hmm. But it has worked in a number of the 5D and the other principles. I have models around getting intentional in a 90-day time frame, creating a plan around that, and then having weekly planning sessions with yourself where you orient to where you're trying to be, and just getting really intentional with your life. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but anyway.
Well, then I will.
That's kind of how that works. Yeah.
Because it just I know people are going to ask, how to work with you or what you're offering. So tell us a little bit about what it looks like to work with you. What are the options?
Sure. I'm the creator of 2 things. I'm a creator of a lot of things, but the big ones I want to share with you today are the HERO method, which is the over-encompassing method that I use as a consultant, coach, and leadership, which is to HRO, harness your personal potential first, because you're the limiting factor on everything in your business. Rally your executive leadership team. Get some people who are managers and get them around the table every 2 weeks for an hour or 2 and go, okay, let's grow this business together instead of it being just me. And then optimize, which is then taking that leadership team and getting everybody on the staff acting more like an owner, right? Yeah. That they get it. Yeah. And so that method is comprehensive, and that takes a little bit of time to get through that. The other thing that I've created very recently is the CEO game plan, which is my sort of prerequisite intro offer that within 7 weeks, I teach you all the basics so that if you've got a game plan, to make that transition from what I call a glorified manager to an organizational leader. And you can take that game plan, you can run with it, and I'll give you some tips on how to sustain that. But it also many times leads into, hey, I'd kind of like some support to make sure I stay on track. And then we talk about what that looks like. And that's where we go on through the rest of the hero model. But the CEO game plan is designed for that, harnessing your individual potential to really get you clicking on intentionality in your life.
Very good. And how do people get in touch with you?
I say the easiest thing is if you're on LinkedIn, you can connect with me there, DM, follow my content. Right now, another side project I have is I'm creating leadership villains and helping people personify the things that are preventing them from reaching their full potential. And so I'm collaborating with an artist and a writer and creating that. That's a lot of fun. So that's showing up a little bit there. Outside of that, my company, peakecoaching.com, that's with an E. So it's PEAKE coaching.com. You can find information there about the game plan and how to get in contact with us, and even my cell number. And I welcome a text.
And I will be sure and put the links in the comments on this video. All right, Bing, thank you so much for being here. I have loved talking to you, and I know a lot of people are going to really resonate with the struggles that restaurant owners go through, and be glad that there's somebody out there like you who's going to help them get things in order and make the vision become a reality.
Well, thank you so much. It's really my heart to see restaurant owners and employees not have to deal with so much difficulty and to enjoy their work again.
Well, thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks much.